Hey folks, Knox here for another update on gathering optimization. This is for War Within. It'll be pretty similar to Dragonflight topics. We're going to try to go through relatively quickly so that you can get some notes without spending a huge amount of time. So moving right into it, there's a couple of things from Dragonflight that we're going to carry over. Two things specifically you're going to have to re-unlock. One is the ability to gather while mounted. That really only matters for mining and herbalism. Skinning, you're always going to be on the ground anyway. Other thing is vigor. In Dragonflight, gathering glyphs around the world allowed us to unlock certain skills in a small tree. One of those pieces was a choice node where you could choose to get vigor back anytime you gathered. That's not going to be in place in the same way, although it still exists in War Within. It's part of an unlock in the actual skill node itself. So, in this update, when you start War Within, you're going to pick up your profession skill there in Dornegal, and then when you start leveling, once you get to skill 25 and unlock your first specialization, that's when you'll start getting some of those things back. What we're aiming for here is really more on a casual optimization level. What does that mean? That means we're not doing a dedicated farming build. Dedicated farming is really going to be focusing more on things like deftness, so you can get the absolute maximum number of materials per hour so that you spend the least amount of time mining in a specific location. So those are the bots that you see flying around, grabbing all the materials everywhere and causing all your nodes to despawn, which is annoying, but whatever. Here, we're looking at the top three being raw skill, the ability to do it while mounted for convenience, and perception so that we get those extra rare materials as we go. That's really it. Finesse and deftness and specific skill bonuses are just kind of a nice to have. We're not going to cover any of those in detail in this guide. Really, those just sort of happen along some of those 5-point nodes. And when we get them, that's great, but we're not aiming specifically for them. We're also looking at where we want to spend our points and where we want to do our unlocks. So those will be two separate things. Mostly your points are the important part, but when you unlock certain skills or certain trees is important from the standpoint of you may get the points to do things before you have the actual thing unlocked, depending on what order you've done things in. You may only be at skill 37 when you have 60 points, for example. So depending on if you go find your treasures first or if you actually go start your farming first, your mileage may vary on those. So when we start covering these, just keep that in mind. We're also going to cover where you get your knowledge, but that's in a little bit. Let's touch mining real quickly. This one is the painful one. You do have to get 60 points to mine while mounted. That is going to take a little bit of effort. The first 40 points are very easy. The next 20 take a little bit more work. But when you start unlocking your specializations, because that is such a heavy investment, you want to go ahead and hit mining fundamentals first. Then I would suggest hitting mastering the mysterious second, just so that you can, because it takes so long to get those mining fundamentals points in, getting the mastering the mysterious moving along means that you're going to start getting that CDR for your overloads and being at least cognizant of the fact that when you're going to want to keep that on cooldown as much as possible for any high value overloads that you find, which for mining really just means weeping. Everything else kind of sucks from a just raw materials gather. Easy mine is the other one that is sort of okay, but you do have to play the little mini game of mine some stuff and don't die. So that being said, moving into your point allocation order, you want to go ahead and max out mining fundamentals. That gets you mounted. Then go into plethora of ore. So getting mastering the mysterious unlocked as far as a specialization is important so that we get that base cooldown reduction. But actually the raw skill across all types of ore is really, really important for plethora. And that starts getting you that rank 2 and rank 3 ore when you're gathering just regularly, as opposed to always having that rank 1 nastiness. So we're going to use our first 110 points, which is a big ask, to do our mining fundamentals and plethora, and then we'll finally move into the last 45 points that we're actually covering in this guide into Mastering the Mysterious to unlock those subspecializations so that when you do your overloads or when you mine from specific nodes, the downsides don't hurt as bad, and it also gives you higher CDR as you move around the ring of that Mastering the Mysterious. From there, it's really just user preference. So there's no dedicated perception nodes in mining, which is a little awkward. You're only going to get perception bonuses from some of those 5-point unlocks. So because it's distributed across all the different nodes, you really only have those 3 that are high priority, and then from there just kind of put in what you care about. So if you want to go through and put all the rest of your points in easy mine because you really liked playing that mini game of getting as much as you can before dying, go for it. If you want to go for weaving, go for it. If you want to go for seams because you just happen to be a cave diver and like going and finding seams, do it. So moving on, herbalism. This one is a little easier to get your points in, but it also has one extra node that we care about. So specialization order unlock, pretty similar. We're going to go botany first just to get our mining while mounted, or not mining here, I guess it's herbalism. Gathering while mounted with botany, then overloading to unlock, then bountiful harvests. But notice again, our point distribution goes in a slightly different order. Get that botany first. You can do a sky golem with a skip, but because the incremental unlocks are so good in botany, I would recommend doing it anyway, even if you have a sky golem to allow you to herb while mounted. So I think either way, this guide is going to kind of hold through the same point distributions, because the next piece is you want to get bountiful harvests, which is just off of there, and that's big raw skill increases. So good. Getting your rank 2, rank 3 harvests is a really, really nice bonus there. And then going to cultivation, this is the difference. So mining didn't have a dedicated perception node. Herbalism does. So cultivation is huge. Getting that 40 out of 40 perception will really, really help you get more rare materials as you go. And then we move into overloading the underground and being able to unlock all of those subspecializations and getting the extra CDR on herbalism. So pretty similar overall, mining and herbalism. Similar to the way Dragonflight was, is they kind of mirror each other in at least a decent fashion. Moving on to skinning, again, this one's sort of the special child. It's moving on to the, well, we don't actually have nodes and you're using creatures, and so there's no mounted skill unlock. With that, we have 2 choices of paths. You can either go towards luring, which is getting those elite special mobs to come out of nowhere because you're putting meat on the ground and you pull things in and you get skin from them, or trophy taker, which is the incremental gain for longer farming sessions. So if you're going and doing the bee and wolf farm or something like that, trophy taker is going to give you more over there. Here's our recommended path. Go ahead and put 20 points immediately into harvesting to unlock 2 specializations. You don't really care about the third, but you're going to care about trophy taker the most, because that is a ton of perception, which will help you get more points because it'll also give you those rare drops that we'll talk about in just a second. And then you also want 0 points. We just want to unlock the specialization for meat carver, and that gives us the special ability to once an hour carve meat. It's literally in the name. It allows us to, on our next skinning attempt, get some bonus meat. Then we move over 40 points in luring. That allows us to create lures and use them and get good cooldown reduction with that, and then go either into Trained Tracker or an Impressive Infuser. Trained Tracker is where you can get elite and super elite from your lures. Impressive Infuser allows you to then, instead of a regular lure, you have a crystallized lure or a spore fused lure or something like that that gives you those bonus rare materials coming back. And you will get more than you put in. So if you start off with the crystallized at 0 points, it takes 3 crystal powder, but you'll get 5 or more back. So you're always getting more than you put into it, with obviously more perception giving you more. So skinning's pretty easy for the most part. We would recommend going Trained Tracker because that's going to at least get you towards those elites, which will give you better rare materials, the hides that you want, along with just the regular leather and the ruby and chitin. And then Impressive Infuser, you can follow up after that. So less points required to kind of fill out the required pieces of the trees here, but you also get less points in skinning than you would with herbalism or mining. So knowledge points, there's a couple of different ways you can get them. Let's talk about things that you can't get anymore. So if you're coming from Dragonflight and you're used to Profession Masters, the hidden ones that you could find for a big boost, they're gone. We don't have those there, so don't look for that. We also don't have Dragon Shards, so no more recurring bonus there. But what we do have is the new crafts and gathers. That's the same. So anytime you gather a new node, so the first time you grab a crystallized bismuth, for example, that's going to give you a point. If you've never gotten a bismuth before and you get a crystallized bismuth, well, it counts for 2. It counts for the first time you've gotten a bismuth and the first time you've gotten a crystallized version. It also counts for unique combinations. So you've gotten crystallized bismuths, great. Well, what about a crystallized iron claw? Well, you still get a point for that because it's a crystallized version of a different material. So any new craft and gather is going to give you 1 point each. There's also drops. You're going to get up to 5 per week of the basic drops, which are blue quality. They are 1 point each, and then you get an epic drop. Depending on your profession, that's worth different amounts of points. So skinning is worth the least at 2 points, and then it goes up to 4. So what you're looking there is somewhere between 7 and 9 points per week of just pretty easy from your first, 10, 15 gathers, you'll get a number of these. And then after that, it starts to fall off a little bit. But if you're playing your character a fair amount per week, it's not unusual to unlock these within the first day or so. And then after that, there are rare drops. So you can still get additional points just from doing the thing, right? So you're just going to be continuing to mine, continuing to herb, continuing to skin. You'll get more rare drops that'll give 1 point each, and those are just drops from doing the profession itself. There's also hidden treasures. There are 8 per profession, 2 per zone. There are guides on Wowhead you can go look at for finding those. The general thing is that most of the major cities, so Merildar or Gundergaz, are going to have one of those per profession kind of pretty close to it, and then there's usually another node where the other one is found in kind of a small area. There's some exceptions to that where sometimes things are co-located or they're really spread out, but for the most part, there's pretty much 2 places that you'll go, gather your 2 profession treasures for each of those 2 locations per zone. It doesn't take too long. It takes maybe an hour total to fly around and get all 16 treasures. Track that. They're 3 points each. It's actually a huge amount. 24 knowledge points is about half of any of those big rings. So it's a good thing to grab very, very early on. There's 3 types of books you can get. They are 10 to 15 points each, depending on if you're doing crafting or gathering. So because it's a gathering guide, most of these are going to be 15 pointers. There's reputation. We'll hit that in the next slide for which ones do which points. But there's only 1 book instead of 2. So back in Dragonflight, we had the ability to unlock a book for 5 points here, and then later on at a higher reputation, you got another book for 5 points. Here, it's just you have to get to rep 12, and then you can buy the book, and that's it. There's just 1 book, but it's a big amount of points. Then there's the City of Threads. You can purchase for 565 kedge. You can get an additional book for the same amount, and each one is from a vendor, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then Lyrandal in Dornegal, he's in the Artisan Consortium building. I actually put the coordinates there because he's kind of hard to find if you don't know where he is. But he sells 3 books that are increasing in cost. It's 200, 300, and 400 Artisan metal in order to buy. They do refund some, so because there are 15 points for gathering, that's going to be 75 refund, so it really only costs 125, 225, and 325, but you do have to have the initial amount before you get the refund. So anyway, things to note there. Spend some metal, get some extra points. If you're looking at the total of 5 books, that's another 75 points you can get just from books there. And then don't forget about the Dark Moon Fair. You can get 3 points per month just for free for doing a little tiny quest. Finally, knowledge point reference charts. There's a little thing for if you're doing, in this case, herbalism, Hallowfall, so that's there in Merildar. If you're doing mining, it's there in the assembly, there in Gundergaz, and then skinning is also in Hallowfall. So if you have the other professions, there's where to find them. If you're looking for the City of Threads vendors, I would recommend just flying around the City of Threads with your profession trainers tracked. So that's in your upper right, usually unless you've got a UI mod, but in your upper right, just above your map, you can turn on tracking profession trainers, and then you just look for the book on your mini-map as you fly over, hop down, get your book. It's not the actual trainer. It will be a seller right next to them. So for example, there's a skinning trainer and then there's a skinning supplies. Skinning supplies is the guy that actually has the book. So there you have it. Hopefully that's been a relatively quick guide. I know there's a lot to talk about, but hopefully you got something out of it. And as usual, good game and good luck.